more good.
Serious chat.
And with that, it's More Good Drinks with Justin McKenzie from Hawthorn Lounge, Hawthorn without an E, thank you very much, in Wellington, here for a very special occasion, celebrating 20 years. Not very many bars make it that long. Did you have any idea when you started that that's where you would be?
Not even close. The original concept for Hawthorn, or the timing was, my brother and I had a bit of money. We had an opportunity to take the bar over from the operators that were here previously, which had only been here a short time, a little hidden bar. It was called Beaumont. And we had the opportunity to take it over, and we both sort of sat down, right, what we'll do is go hard and fast for 2 years using our money, and then we'll buy a house. 2 years later, we took the money and opened a bar on Courtney Place. And that was there up until 2024. So that did a good run as well. That was Hooch and then CGR Merchant. And then 2 years in 2010, we opened Cuckoo. And here we are, 20 years later. I do have a house, which was but yeah, still here, which is pretty, I think it's pretty amazing. I think there's been lots of turmoil and up and downs with relationships through the time and getting here. So we're in family and stuff, that's what happens. But it's just been I think it was just a huge challenge to keep the bar going. I think it became exciting. And it still is exciting, which is quite nice. Even yesterday I had one-on-ones with my team and just so proud of the current team and what they do to make Hawthorn what it's always been, which I think is really harder than a lot of people think. I think it's the biggest challenge of having a bar for that long that's just a bar.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Unpack that for me.
So I think unpack that for you. So the bar as a concept, when we were growing up, my grandfather would look after us because parents were busy doing their thing. And part of that was we would sit in his house. And he was a lovely gentleman. He would go to work in a three-piece suit and a cravat, smoke a pipe and have a cane, walking, One stage he even went to work in a bowler. I mean, he was very old school. And he would sit in his sitting room, smoking a pipe, drinking whiskey on couches with politicians and other well-to-dos, while we would sit on a highly flammable pink nylon mat rug in the TV room watching cartoons, eating baked bean with spaghetti and cheese toasties, which come back to with the bar. And it was all about chatting and drinking and discussing. And he would tell us stories of just sitting and catching up and having lovely conversations. And at the time with Hawthorn, we're at the time with bars in Wellington and bars around the country, the world had sort of got to a point where electronic music had come into every venue. So you could go to a cafe and have brunch and it was electronic music. You go to dinner, it'd be electronic music, and then you go to the club and it'd be electronic music. And the whole bar, restaurant, cafe, nightclub thing morphed into multi-venue. And it was pretty cool for a time, but it was also on the back of a very hedonistic phase of 24-hour drinking and 24-hour, very different hospitality. So my brother and I were very much about drinks. I mean, I was taught to stir my first martini by that same grandfather. And talking to him about the room, we decided we wanted to create a bar that was, you could sit in, you could talk, but the music wasn't over the level, and you just lost time. So, and that was really a big part for the room. It was like you walk into the room, and even today, 20 years later,
with the lights on, might I add. It is quite interesting to see it with the lights on today.
This is lights on, chairs up, Unfortunately, we had a fire last week, so I brought in some retro fire, little electronic fire. We had a chimney fire last Tuesday, so we're out of action for a little bit. No marshmallows, I'm sorry.
Oh dear.
So that's a first in 20 years. That's a bit of a shitter. But yeah, with the lights on, the room is it's absorbing. You walk in, I feel it's a really absorbing room. You walk in and it's comfy and it's cozy. You can see everyone, but you can't hear everyone. And I really like that. I think it's really important. And so as time's gone on and the proliferation of smartphones, I think that opportunity to separate yourself from your phone and talk to people may have been really good in Hawthorn's stead, I suppose. People come here to catch up, come here for a celebration and come back in a cycle and then walk in and go, everything's the same. We spend a lot of time making it look exactly the same. I think, I've changed the bar top twice in the 20 years. And we put in a drip rail, which was,
revolutionary.
It's like, wow.
High tech.
High tech. We are on tech. I would suggest if the staff today walk in, if a staff came in who worked here 10 years ago, they could walk in and go straight back to working the bar. Nothing's changed.
Hmm.
Literally, we've changed the ice wells a little bit, but the bar structure is exactly the same as when you walked in. The fridge is in the same place. Everything is, all that consistency, I think, is what makes the room so cool.
Mm.
I went back, obviously 20th birthday, went back and found some photos from opening night, and there's me standing in the middle of the bar, and Johnny, my brother, and I, for opening night, we basically just emptied our liquor cabinets at home on the back bar and went, right, let's go. And so the bar is like single bottles on the shelf, which, as anyone knows the bar, it's like, there's like 200 and something bottles on the back bar. And so that opening night, I think it was 40. And it just looks so weirdly empty. You're standing in front of this bar going, we're ready to open. I'm like, there's nothing on it. It's quite funny. So that's been a big change. But yeah, I think I think Hawthorn as a venue it's a bar. I think that's the biggest thing. Is you come here to enjoy a really good drink, and that's been that's also a big part of coming in here, is that the staff change, but what Hawthorn is the biggest piece of passion I put with the team. It's like, you can create the drinks you want to create in the bar, but they must be under the realm of the Hawthorn model. And so the customers come back and go, oh my God, the drinks, this is delicious, this is different, but it's Hawthorn. Do you know what I mean?
And so,
Right down
so
to
how do you
glassware
break
and
that
stuff.
down? Because when you do have, obviously over 20 years, that's a lot of churn of staff just in
Yeah, yeah.
hospitality years. So how do you keep, as a kind of an SOP type scenario, how do you keep the Hawthorn in the menu and in the style of service and in the personalities that are amplifying the room?
So I think a little bit of a control freak. I could control the drink menu or like sign it off.
Hmm.
And I think, but at the same time, through continuous discussion with the staff around the history of the bar and the back, so the archive of drinks, they sort of engage with where the drinks are at, and they enjoy that opportunity. I think the other side of that is that I give the team pretty much open slather on creativity. So I don't dictate what they need to create, but I'll pull in in measures and volumes. I think it's a big part of our operation is that we are very staunch on our pour levels. So no drinks are more than 2 ounce strong. So, and you can work that through with your martinis and your sours and your highballs, but nothing goes over 2 ounces. And the model there is that we want everyone to enjoy, two drinks in the bar responsibly. And I know that sounds a bit, counterintuitive, but we do want people to, I don't know, you've walked down the stairwell. I want people to get out safely. And quite often we have people who come in for a celebration after celebrating dinner. So you want people to enjoy I'd rather people left here having 2 amazing drinks and going, that was awesome, than leave here, and I say this to my staff, leave here, wake up on their pillow with a soggy kebab with chicken satay sauce smushed into their foreheads. I mean, that's my vision of someone who's had a bad night. It ended badly because the hospitality you received wasn't appropriate. I think we should look after our customers. I want customers to come back every time and go, that was awesome. Not, I can't go back there. Last time I was there, I had Flaming Zambuca, tequila, and Galliano poured over my forehead. That's, speaking from experience. This is, a history.
I'm seeing a lot of transparency here. That's all,
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about some of the people who have come through the doors and work behind that bar in Hawthorn, it's a really incredible list of people actually who now are dotted all over the world, and some just around the corner doing their own thing. But is there a particular? I can look from the outside and go, oh, there's a particular type of person that has always thrived in the Hawthorn experience. But what are some of those markers that you've noticed? What are some of the commonalities of people who have come through the doors and really added a little bit of their own footprint to Hawthorn whilst kowtowing to the control and wizardry of Mr. McKenzie?
I don't know if it's wizardry. I think it's more just like, I think, what is it? That's a hard one because I don't think there's any particular trait. I think I'm a big one for my gut when hiring. And I'm a big one I try to be as honest as I can with people if things aren't there, right? So I don't want someone working in my bar or for me who just doesn't enjoy it. If you don't, no one, I mean, now that we're 20 years in, no one's coming in, very few people are coming into Hawthorn to work here without some, asking a question around what's it like? what do you do? What's the, if you're a flair bartender and you want to head off to Thailand and you want to have fun in that world, or you want to
shake your tins, baby, shake your tins.
exactly, if you're into that, you want to split your eyebrow, go for your life, all that sort of stuff. You're not coming here, right? Or you are coming here with the idea of learning to then take you to the next step. So I'm not saying I haven't had flair bartenders in here. It's been quite entertaining because it's a very low roof. But but I think most of the people, honestly, they've all just been incredibly passionate in who they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So each one's really different. And I would say we've had amazing extroverts and introverts who, once you put them behind the bar here, they have just flourished. Like, they've just been amazing people. And each phase, everyone that has left has been really heartbreaking,
Mm-hmm.
in their own way. But at the same time, we will always say to every person who leaves, you're going on your next challenge, and it's not like you were never going to stay here forever. So don't feel bad for leaving us. But I feel if they go to somewhere that gets them to the next phase of their life and they take something from us, that's awesome. I do sort of get shivers, and I feel slightly embarrassed when people tell me of experiences working for me and being at Hawthorn and how that's transitioned them where they are now, because I don't feel I did a lot apart from really trusting who they are to honour what Hawthorn is in their way, and I think that's important. I mean, trusting your staff is huge. You can't, I spent like years behind a bar with, people watching over your shoulder. What are you doing? What are you doing? It's like, dude, I'm stealing all your alcohol. Go away. It's like,
my observation is that the common thread are people who are learners, which doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be introverts, although certainly Hawthorn's a place where I've seen quieter bartenders really thrive because it's a lounge room and you're not competing with the personality of a DJ or, any of that other stuff that's going on.
I think
and
also
so that really works.
Yeah, I think I should say, I think part of the operation is that no one is above the other person on the team. So we expect everyone to do every job at all times. So be it glasses, bathroom cleaning. So there's that also plays into that hierarchy, that style of person. So you're right. Yeah. Everyone that's come through is a learner of some form. The number of notebooks that are sitting behind the bar that I'm looking at, the guys have in the current team, filled with their own individual creations and recipe transference from other books is cool.
So one of my favorite things about our connection over the years has always been that you're one of the realists when it comes to talking about the economics of industry and about actually what's happening and what adjustments and what changes and not just from I'm frustrated or here's what I can't do, but you've always been, from my observation, really proactive. And I wonder if that's part of the lifespan of Hawthorn, because if we think about when you opened, that opening night, 40 bottles on the back bar.
Yeah.
It was a different time. There was still, some brand investment in venues, but certainly not what we see today, where a new opening might have, 5% contracted in, back bar and rail, but contracts to one side. I think I'd love to know your thoughts on, of some of the great Wellington establishments that were around or in the early days of Hawthorn that have now passed by the wayside, and Hawthorn continues to roll, and what makes that work? What are the economics that you've had to keep dialed in order to survive what some might describe as, one of the more crushing decades in Wellington hospitality?
Yeah, I mean, the last 3 years, I think, have been the most catastrophic for the industry, in that it just the rate of change in costs has been so prolific, and the acceptance of our customers to understand that we're not pillaging them by putting our prices up. We're just trying to stay afloat has been really hard. But I think, that in its own is a soundbite of trade, because that opens up a whole lot of things that I feel for new operators and old operators, because we're all in a different boat right now. But going back to like when we were 06, we opened, I think there's a poster on the roof in the attic here from the 2007 World Cocktail Day cocktail tour. that was Matterhorn House.
Mm.
And at the time, Matterhorn Motel were iconic, right? They were a Matterhorn on so many levels, similar to what Hawthorn Hotel, but in so many levels, from an institution for music, for bar, for food. I mean, what came out of that space was pretty amazing at the time. And Motel for a different way, in that it was a little cocktail bar that kept going. And I think Motel made it, I think 12 years, 15 years, maybe.
Mm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
I think it was that. And again, really amazing people went through all those places. And I think those two really stand out for me, because there was a really lovely, and broader from them, but a really lovely society. We would all talk about what we're doing, what we're going through. The bartenders would interact, and there would be sparking of creativity. And I was always really proud, because at the time I was working for that vodka company with the big 4-2 on it. And so I would travel the country and wider with likes of Jacob Bryars and that, to promote vodka.
Wait, hold
And
on.
yeah,
Well done. I was just wondering. I had a little bet with myself on how many minutes it would be until
well, I didn't.
until Mr. Bryars came up.
Yeah, well, I didn't think he did. Yeah, I mean, he's a funny one, because we bartended at the same time, right? So
Mm.
we were, but he was at Matterhorn, and I was at a bar called Q, which is going back to 98, 97. Some, half my staff aren't even that old, which is quite frightening. It's like, whoa. But, the nice thing was that you would have a drink after work or during shift, and you would catch up and you'd talk about things. And I think traveling, like my opportunity with going with 42 around, was one thing I always found really lovely about Wellington, is you come back as the community was always there for each
Mm.
other. You would, the bartenders, the restaurateurs, and it's still there today. It's a little bit lesser. We're all dealing with our own monkeys right now.
Mm.
But I always found that really a positive environment. And so you could always feel you could talk to people about what you were experiencing, what was happening, and not feel like they were going to just criticize you for having a different thought. I think through time, I don't know. I mean, I think Matterhorn, the transition of the building was the biggest problem there. And then ownership changes, the boys moved on, and then what Matterhorn was sort of transitioned away. I think ownership change, is one of the biggest breakers for a standalone business, right? So if you go to the big, if you go to the larger groups around the country and they're doing whatever they're doing, they get to a size, and then our breweries have this attitude where they get to critical mass and the breweries go, right, we can do that better. We'll buy all those. And they spend about 5 years going, we're really good at this. And then they turn around and go, actually, we're really bad at this. Let's sell them all. And then go back to selling spirits and beer. That's my experience over the last 30 years. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
buy lots, sell them. And it's this never ending, it's this cycle of development. But with standalones, ownership, either there's transition to a staff member who's been iconic in that business, and the business maintains and keeps going. But if you take you take a concept of service and consistency and identity, and then you take the pillar out of that and try and hand it off to someone else, I'm not sure that I can think of any that have actually survived. Do you know,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
unless there's like family succession,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, there's very few that have transitioned. I think you mentioned the other week, Mo's in Auckland? I think
Yeah.
I think that might be the only one they've transitioned with ownership,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But apart from that, it's a weird aspect of bars that the transition isn't always as positive as you think. Saying
Mm.
that, in this current climate, there's a bigger problem that we all have as if you're a bar owner, and a bar owner I feel, is a person who doesn't have a kitchen or an extensive deep fryer menu.
Yeah.
It's getting harder and harder for us to actually do what we do. The
Mm-hmm.
expectation around responsible service and licensing and compliance with police and health, that the offering of food needs to be more and more substantial and greater, is pushing people away from just opening bars and opening, there's a little more tapas, Spanish style things coming through, but they're not necessarily cocktail. And so it becomes a much harder conversation around how do you run a cocktail bar without a full food offering,
Mm-hmm.
how things are changing.
And part of the challenge is because, I'm working on a story on this, where when you start to unpack actually the requirements that you have to meet, it's almost impossible to open a bar now and to manage a bar because that substantial food piece is really large. What happens there actually is a dichotomy of who's responsible for culture. Because if we as New Zealanders want to be a destination and a place for locals that's renowned for great food and beverage, but the people who are responsible for enabling or allowing that to happen in a responsible way are not curators of culture, are not people who care about how are we creating great hospitality, then straight away the two outcomes are pulled apart from each other. So the question needs to be, how do we make sure that people can create and deliver great hospitality experiences in responsible ways, rather than how do we make sure that nobody can do anything irresponsible regardless of the experience? That's my controversial opinion.
Well, I think, but there's a is it a caveat? There's also an aspect to that is that we have those controls and those expectations on a licensed premise, but we don't have those expectations on people as the sentient being who controls their decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about max pour being 2 ounces or 60 mils of heavy liquor in an old fashioned or in a drink in cold Hawthorn. We do that. I'm very clear with that with the staff. I think it's really important that we have a responsible level of what we know how many drinks they might be consuming. Our society doesn't have that same control when you go to liquor stores or home consumption. I think the agencies are really coming down or looking at licensed premises in a way that it's the easy one to hit, right? You can't come at people's personal choice, but they can come at licensed premises and go, hey, you need to be better. What better is subjected to the licensing agency and the people you're dealing with. And I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong. What they're doing, I think they're doing the best they can do under the legislation that we have. The interpretation is the bit that gets me. It's like, some people interpret it really heavily. Others are a little more lenient. That can become problematic. I know some of the bigger groups who have outlets in different licensed areas find it incredibly hard, especially in Wellington. I mean, we've had comments from owners where the Kapiti Coast is really progressive and the Hut Council are more progressive, and City Council is more sort of, I suppose, has been more controlling. I'm interested to see how that changes under the new structure. But also the argument would be that, they always pull out that data of harm, right? It's always harm related to alcohol or hospital admissions related to alcohol. That's any alcohol. It's not how many drinks did you have at such and such bar. It's did you drink, and so then that data is used to limit people's ability to open a bar, and or open a bar that focuses drinks. What they say is, well, what we want you to do is we want you to have a really substantial food offering, so to mitigate the effects of alcohol causing harm, that's what you need to do. Okay, what is that? How many, what is that? And then the unfortunate aspect of that is that while that's what they would like us to do, there's no public sort of disclosure to society that that's what they're asking. It's just your bartender has to impart that knowledge to your customer, and it's not our fault, it's your fault. That's really hard, really tough. And then, from an operational point, it's just cost. Like, you go to the supermarket and buy 500 grams of butter. I go to the supermarket, buy 500 grams of butter. I buy a dozen eggs. You buy a dozen eggs. They cost the same. Even at wholesale pricing, there's not a huge difference in those. And so if it costs you $9 for a thing of butter, if it costs me $9 for a thing of butter, that's the same for every hospitality business. And so if you're not actually serving that food, literally you're buying produce to throw away. And I find that disgusting. Yeah, I think it's just creating a waste culture, and that's why and I think a lot of other bar owners will be the same boat. Well, you can't do that. It doesn't make sense, right? So I'm really
Which is why we end
intrigued.
up in a downward spiral, right, towards the deep fryer or the soggy oven baked chips, and I'm never going to say that the toasty is at the bottom of a downward spiral. I mean, the
Don't.
toasty is the echelon of the upward spiral. Like, the toasty is where we land because it's the elite bar snack.
It is totally, like, it's so elite. I'd love to go back and work out how many sandwich presses we've gone through in 20 years. I think that would be a funny. I think going back to the toasty for Hawthorn, when we opened Hawthorn, the toasty was literally white bread, tasty cheese, and what is spaghetti in a jaffle, like the little triangle, the ones that, In fact, in the bathroom or in the store cupboard here is one of the original iron sandwich presses that you put in the fire that one of the staff found in an op shop,
Mhm.
which we did for a while, but that just became a health and safety issue, obviously,
Yeah.
with people melting cheese. It's like, what
It's
the?
remarkable that you made it 20 years without a chimney fire.
Thanks. Yeah, fucking hell. Yeah,
Wise
so
choices.
so I mean, I think when we started, the toasty was such an iconic part of our upbringing, right? So the toasty
Mm.
was just it had to be there. And now I'm the first to sit at this bar with an excessive drizzling of sea salt on a 3-cheese toasted sandwich with hot sauce and a glass of cognac. I think it's delicious,
Mhm.
and it works.
Isn't it
I
amazing
wouldn't
how
change it.
nostalgia becomes novelty?
Oh, totally.
Just
Yeah,
with cycles, just nostalgia,
yeah.
novelty. And I'm waiting for the novelty moment with cognac, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm the biggest advocate for cognac. I think the staff think I'm mad, but that's my drink when I'm in the bar. I think we need to enjoy. I think the biggest thing I have with any bottle on the back bar is regardless of how you enjoy it and what you think of it, someone somewhere has put their heart and soul into that original bottling and that original creative take on whatever the spirit is. Take global conglomerate booze companies who then take them and sabotage and do whatever they do to them afterwards. The original aspect was just someone put their heart and soul into creating that, and someone may have done it hundreds of years ago. And I think
Mm.
that's really important when you look at a back bar. You go, the journeys on that back bar are so cool, and so I think it's really so that you want then you want to honor that, right? You want to say, well, you want to use the product. I think that's I'm a big believer in that. I think it's really important to try the stuff that's on your bar. You can't just sit there. And also take that journey with your customers. Have you tried this? No, neither have I. Let's try that. Do you like it?
Mm.
No, that's god awful. Okay, cool. Like, when I was 20, when I stole it from my grandfather's liquor cabinet.
Mhm. I'm sure you had a great appreciation for it when you were 12
No,
and 20.
not 12. No, 20. Yeah, no, not there. It took me a while. Chartreuse was a slow one for me. Yeah, but it's
Mhm.
now it's just again though you go back to the appreciation of the time,
Mm.
the work that's gone into it is pretty cool.
Mm.
Yeah. So sorry, tangented big time. So
It's a beautiful tangent. I love
oh
it.
yeah, yeah.
I wanna come back to so obviously the toasty, part
Mm-hmm.
of that hidden cost, right, is the hidden labor cost of
Food.
you're in the business of serving drinks, but if you also have to run a comprehensive, substantial menu offering on a busy Friday and Saturday night, that is labor cost, right?
Yeah. I mean, even like we had this on Friday. Literally with 6 o'clock, Hawthorn was full. Normally we would, have a slow start with people coming a little bit later pre-dinner, post-dinner. So we roster our staff accordingly because our days are not super late, but they're long. We're a 5 till 3 a.m., 5 nights a week. That's the day. There's no option. There's no closing early. That's Justin's rule. 6 o'clock, 6:15 Friday, I'm getting messages on the chat. Can someone come in early? I'm stuck out back. I've got a full bar and they're all ordering charcuterie and cheese boards. And I've got
Mm.
2 staff. Now, it's great that people are coming to Hawthorn for charcuterie and cheese before going to dinner. Cool. However, what that does is that the second person who's rostered at that time is on bar 8, 9 dockets deep. Customers are waiting. I think we lost one pair because of the wait time got to up to 20 minutes because time and effort and consistency of the drink is important.
Mm.
Fortunately, most people understood what had happened. Everyone arrived at the same time. Everyone did but the hidden cost in that is that we lost the opportunity to get a second drink from every person
Mm.
because, as much as we try and prepare those food items, you can't just have it you can't have it, wrapped up in the back and just pull the cover off and, hey, presto, here's some soggy cheese, some shitty olives. So the cost of, so then you turn around and go, oh, maybe we need to have another person.
Right, yep.
And you do that, right? But you do that, you try that, but then invariably that what occurred that week doesn't happen next week. And there's no rhyme or reason to what happened last week. And at the same time, we often talk about Hawthorn. You have to be ready to serve at any time because the bar can go from empty to full with 2 groups walking up the stairs.
Mm.
So our capacity is 45. A couple of weeks ago, we had a doctor's convention and 25 of them walked up the stairs at 11 o'clock and the team had to go from, a nice cruisy evening to seating 25 doctors who didn't want to sit down, who wanted to talk and had a couple of drinks on board from dinner. And so you have to turn that charm, that welcome, that Hawthorn experience on immediately. But again, do you put another person on there? You don't. But that happened because that conference was on. The cost, if you wanted to bring someone on at 35, 40 hours a week, it's just not viable in this current climate because the consistency of your customer base is so broken. And that's because, and that comes back to where we are as a society right now. There's nothing, accountant and I spent quite a bit of time ripping through my numbers to find opportunities for efficiencies of cost of goods, wages, OPEX. And I feel we're pretty tight. We are pretty good. We know where everything is. We know where every cent is. What we don't have is consistent people being able to go out. And that's not that they don't want to go out. It's that they aren't, for whatever reason, personally, they can't go out more consistently. I think that another side of it is that the top line narrative around hospitality is, if you talk to anyone, I'd go out more, but it's so expensive. And I'm like, yeah, but you sit at home and get delivery, Uber Eats 3 nights a week and pay someone $10 to deliver it and take 30% off the poor noodle guy maker down the street who's literally upped his prices to the point of a medium to fine dining restaurant for a Nazi Lamac because he's having to supplement his income for the driver to bring it to you. And you live in an apartment, 8 floors up and 1 traffic light away from that service provider. You could just go and get it. That's my little dig. Anyway.
But there is something, and there's a fine balance point because if we in hospitality are no longer providing what it is that the customer is looking for at a price point that the customer is willing to pay, that's not the customer's fault. And so we have to figure out how to navigate and recreate ourselves and recreate our pricing models to go, okay, so maybe our customer is a smaller group than we thought they were, than they were before. Or maybe, their patterns have changed. And there is a little bit, I think, of partly because Hospitality New Zealand has had such a hard run over the last few years that there hasn't been the margin, but there hasn't been the margin to catch up with how that consumer behavior is changing. Because I see markets like the US and the UK and even Australia have adapted much quicker to the changing pace of the dining experience or the changing pace of the drink. People are in at 5 and they're out by 7:30, and the second wave is in at 7:45 and they're out by 9. And some of that is changing in terms of patterns of behavior. But it feels like New Zealand just hasn't had that breath to kind of catch up and go, okay, here's where we need to go now. Without having to do, I remember a couple of years ago, having a conversation, joking about, will it be 18 months or 2 years until you have to price your cocktail at X amount? And that phone call happened, 2-3 months ago when you were like, yep, there it is.
There it is. Yeah. I'm not in an airport or a hotel, but there it is. It's like bang. And I think, I'm a big one of menu structure and menu pricing to lead your customers on a journey. But at the same time, if you want to use good product, interesting product, not good product, interesting product and different product, it becomes really prohibitive in how to manage your costs to make it profitable. So bane of my life is the $10 shitty margarita at some bar. And it's not because that bar's doing the wrong thing. That's great. What it does do is it sets a precedent in the customer's mind that a margarita should be $10. And I'm like, well, okay, but a Mercedes isn't the same price as a Mitsubishi, and they both get you somewhere, right? So you can't, and that's the bit that I find frustrating is the singular expectation of something costs A here and X there, but they're the same thing because the name's the same. I think we definitely need to be conscious that, there's a lot of shrinkage going on. So we've always done small drinks. So that hasn't really affected, that's who we are. But there's a lot of shrinkage in wine and beer pour going on to people to maintain, to try and achieve a little bit more margin, But what that's doing, I think, is you then have some outlier who will go, I'll do an imperial pint for everything, take a lesser margin because they've got the turn, and then again, creating the same dynamic. And I don't think everyone can do the same thing at all. I think if you're going to, I think big thing with the new thing is that people want an experience. They want to feel that the money they're spending is worth the spend, right? So I find, that's why it's really important. The culture of Hawthorn is you walk in, everyone gets welcomed, everyone gets farewelled. It's not like a big cheers over the bar, but a raised hand, a nod, whatever, greeted at the door and seated. I'm a firm believer that you can, for a customer experience, you can make an absolute mess of the middle. Like you could drop a tray of Bloody Marys on someone's head, destroy their wedding gown, almost experience, but not a wedding gown. But that person will be so appreciative of how you handled it that they will come back to you. And in fact, my head bartender, Kat, had this happen a couple of weeks ago. She refused service to people so politely and so intelligently and so well, they tipped her 10% of the bill after being cut off and told to leave.
That's awesome.
So I think, that's the experience I want. They're going to go, we had such a good time. We were kicked out, but we will go back there. And I think that's what people in hospital need to be. I think, and that comes back to, for me, it's, are you being consistent to your model? Are you being consistent to who you are as an operator and to your staff? Because people love consistency. They will love knowing what they're getting. You're right. Your customer base is shrinking. But there's more of us out there. There's less people going out as much. So they're more discerning with their spend. So what makes you special? Do you know? And it doesn't, I'm not talking about being like firecrackers and blah, 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 and not a signature drink. Just, do you love what you're doing, and are you in the game to make the experience right? And that's what I believe. I think that's the biggest, that is one thing I try and relate to the staff. Does everyone love being, do you want to be here? Our customers want to be here. And our customers know, if you don't want to be here, if you're having a bad day, our customers know that. And you can see that if you go out, if you're traveling, you go out and you have a, lunch, dinner, breakfast in any venue, when you're in a venue where the staff don't want to be there. The moment you walk in, right? And it may just having a bad day, that's cool. But how is that bad day being accommodated and managed? But yeah, why would you go back if that's your experience? I think, the other thing that's really important is to understand that, yes, we're in the hospitality business, but we are basically car salesmen, right? So we are here to sell product and sell an experience, not stand there on your phone. Do you know? I think so what is that experience? And to that vein, it's really important that our staff have buy-in on the menu. They all have to have drinks on the menu, even the glassy. They have to be part of the creative process, because if they have ownership, then they have pride. And if they have pride, that's in their persona when they meet our customers. What would you recommend? I made this one, blah, 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 blah. And it may not work that way because the customer actually doesn't want that drink, but at least they have that. That's a pretty cool feeling. Especially, with some of younger staff, like 20-year-olds are putting a drink on a menu in Hawthorn, and they are like, it's pretty cool. They get really excited. Yeah.
And whilst there is that careful management of the menu, the understanding is that all the guardrails have been there all the way along to get them to the point where they're ready to be able to put a drink on a menu. And everybody in the team can stand up and go, hey, a 20-year-old glassy made this, and we're done with it.
Yeah. And I think it's really, and I think that's really exciting. But I think that is coming back to how we need to change. I think you're right. Overseas, there's been a lot more fluid change, much faster reaction. Here and I think it's a little bit of a Kiwi thing. Like for so many years, restaurants, cafes that have been so afraid to put their prices up because they'll offend their customer. And I'll be honest, we did that. We did that as well. We were like, well, we'll just have to change our product line. We have to change our baseline. But actually, that was a false statement on who we are. Yeah, and I think that's the problem with that now, is that it's become, when we should have been moving our pricing, we didn't, and now it's like it's $27 for bacon and eggs. What the it's like, hang on, what happened there? It's all of a sudden, or your pints, your glass pints are now $4.15, not $4.65, and your wine glasses are not 150s or 250s, they're 125s and 75s, and it comes back to that shrinkage and experience thing that people go, hang on, I'm paying the same amount as last time, but it's not the same experience. And it's hard. Um,
I remember in the conversation about pricing, you
mm,
talked really specifically about that principle of I'm moving now because there's it's that one instance perhaps where actually being bleeding edge and perhaps being the first to jump into the price rise actually ends up saving you or making you money so that you're not bleeding out by the time you do put your prices up, at
yeah,
which point it's that $5 jump, to use a newsy example.
yeah,
It's the $5 jump instead of the $1.50. Are there any other 20 years is longevity?
yeah.
And this is not the first financial whoa that
No.
Hawthorn has weathered. And the thing I'm always reminded of in the whiskey business, right, is that whiskey moves in cycles, but they're 7 to 10 year cycles. And so people have remarkably short memories. By the time they get to year 8, it always feels like it's a shock. I'm curious though, are there things that you see that you would call mistakes or missteps that you see in hospitality right now that are perhaps a little bit too short term in thinking, where with the benefit of 20 years of hindsight, you're like, I think where we ought to focus is somewhere different.
Ouch. I don't want to be that guy. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think I get really excited when new people open stuff.
Mhm.
I think it's really it's exciting. It says so much. Like like the comment about people who put stuff in a bottle. I like to feel that someone's decided and created an identity and a vibe and a menu and an offering that has some tangible attachment to who they are, and they're putting it out to the world. And I think that's all. I think in the current climate, I think where we've got things, if we were going to be honest about things getting wrong, is I think that the level of expectation from agencies around their input impacts people's ability to be independent and creative to a huge extent. And the other thing that also impacts that is 20 years ago, we threw together, you know, Hawthorn on a bit of money that you would never be able to do now. It
Mm,
was now landlords' expectations of rents, operational expenses, be it water, insurance, rates, and then obviously the cost of wages. Once you get to a point that you need wages, if you're a small operator, right? Because that's always the kicker for a lot of people is like, I'm kicked off, I'm started, and now I need to hire people. And hang on, my numbers don't work anymore. But I think that agency impact is really causing people to be conservative in what they're doing, and also those uninitiated operating costs are so impactful on your day to day that you're talking six figures minimum just to get the ball rolling. And if you're a young person who's rolled out of university, been working part time in a bar, and you're going, I found a really cool spot, I want to do a X, Y, Z, and all of a sudden you're up for mortgaging the parents' house or taking a bank loan, which you probably won't get in this current climate because hospitality is seen as so dangerous from a
mm,
financial aspect
mm,
without security. Then so that's where I find those people who are doing that now, I have huge respect for, because they've gone through all that and gone, yes. I suppose the biggest thing for me then is when they said yes, are they aware of the impacts of taxation, compliance costs rolling into year 2 and 3?
mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because most people don't go, oh, I don't have to pay tax for the first 24 months. That's cool. Yeah, but you made some money. So where is it? And,
Mhm.
oh, well, yeah, I bought an extra fridge, or I took an extra trip to Melbourne to scope things out. Those little things that people do, and I respect that because you're wanting to learn. But I think we don't have a yeah. It's a hard one to say what we're doing wrong. I think if anything, what we're doing wrong is that we're being a little bit too controlling. I mean, Southeast Asia is a hilarious place to go and have a check out drinking because the amount of investment, the cost to invest and build is so minimal, but they do some
Mm,
crazy shit, right?
mm,
And you're like, why can't we do that at home? And you're like, well, there's no way, A, we can't put stuff in that size vessel. B, you can't put stuff in a flaming this. You can't, all these things come in that you need to be aware of from a food and service control. And I don't think those things are bad in their entirety, but also, if you get it wrong, you get it wrong.
I don't think people realize exactly how conservative the backbone of New Zealand social construct is
Oh,
when it
yeah.
comes to for a country that prides itself on a DIY, get it done, number 8 fencing wire kind of she'll be right attitude. We're not a she'll be right attitude at all, actually. We're very conservative. when it
Yeah.
comes to what kind of space we allow people to play in. I want to go back to the heart of it all, which is serving good drinks and making people feel welcome and making sure people have a good time.
Mhm.
Because 2 years and then we're buying a house, Johnny, very quickly became 20 years.
Yeah.
Over that 20 years of remarkable menus,
Mhm.
what are the drinks that stand out?
Yeah.
You knew it was coming.
Well, sort of, but I didn't actually pay. I think the two that stand out because they've been on the menu the whole time. They've never come off in 20 years, which is also, I think, a testament to the style. One is strangely enough, it's a vodka sour, which is very unusual, which is the Tory Street. And Johnny KJ, who was the bar manager when we opened, and myself were sitting at the table that's still here, looking out the window, trying to find the name for the last drink, and just said, "Stuff it, Tory Street, there it is, it's outside." So I think KJ said that. It's been on the menu ever since. So it's a shaken vodka, honey, garam masala, egg, white lemon juice, little pechards drizzle on top. And that was putting garam masala into a cocktail 20 years ago, that was mind blowing. And it still sells well. It's still a great little drink. Still served out, shaken up in a coupe. It's a great drink. And the other is when we opened Hawthorn, people were unsure about cocktails, right? So we went straight to big drinks.
Mm.
One of our drinks, we used to put a butane cooker on the bar and flambe cognac with orange and cacao in front of the customers like a crepe Suzette mad person, and then pour that into a glass. Health and safety again, but different world. And so that was sort of really, what are we doing over here? But a lot of people we were trying to bring people on a journey from vodka lemon soda, gin and tonic, bourbon and coke into cocktails without causing heartache. And so we created a menu of twists. And so the vodka twist, which again has been on the menu from the whole time, was passion fruit, elderflower, soda, vodka, fresh lime. Passion fruit, elderflower is a combination of divine. Tart, sweet, earthy. And again, it's just a Moorish drink that you can use it's a great reset drink. It's a double shot of vodka. It's nice and refreshing. But we used to have a rum twist, tequila twist, a bourbon twist, a gin twist, much to the team's disdain because the G always looked like a C. So customers would always order a sin twist, which was like, it's obviously gin, but you guys we had to change the G. And so I think going back to those ideas of transition, then we go into things like the Wolf White Martini. There's the Johnny Roselli, which is a sort of a stirred down Ramazzotti rum and Amaro Montenegro, sort of delicious little Amaro. There's the signature martini using the Hawthorn Edition gin from Lighthouse, which has now been on there since the Hawthorn Edition gin was created, after former manager went and had his stag do it, did the Lighthouse distillery and complained there was no Navy strength gin. And a week later, a bottle turned up from the distiller going, "Here you go," which I still have that bottle unopened. And that gin's still selling for Lighthouse now, which is really cool. But it all came from a drunken afternoon with boys sitting in a distillery drinking. Which
I've often wondered what the origin story of that Lighthouse Hawthorn edition was.
So at the time, which is that's Pete Lowry, he's got a day job. He was with us for 7 years, and I stole Pete from a museum hotel after doing a cocktail walk for Wellington on a Plate with Ruth Pretty, which is an iconic Wellington caterer and restaurateur. And Ruth and I would host 25 ticket holders, and we would walk around 4 or 5 bars on an evening and she would talk about hospitality, I'd talk about cocktails, and we'd walk into each bar, and Pete was the bartender at the museum hotel, and shortly after that, he joined us. We were serving Plymouth gin and Plymouth Navy strength, which we were getting from Pernod as a partner, and then Pernod decided to drop Plymouth Navy strength out of the market. And I think at the time there was no other mainstream Navy strength around. After some grumbles, Pete was over there, and that's where it came from. Literally drinking in the distillery with Neil, the then distiller, and Hawthorn Navy strength Hawthorn Edition was born from that. And it's yummy. It stands up. It's not. I've given it to people who don't drink a lot of gin, and they've got a bit of a surprise. It went in the right dilution and the right stir. It's got great flavor. So it's a cool story. I think it was also it seemed to be one of the lead partnerships between bar and distiller back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been done by everyone since, to varying degrees of success and flavor and so on. But it's quite it's lovely that it's still rolling. Because there was a moment during the transition or Lighthouse's purchase that we thought it might disappear, but they do a bit of it up to the UK, which I'm really proud of. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Lighthouse are you're right, that sale in transition was interesting to watch, but Lighthouse are kind of one of the quiet achievers, first female master distiller, head distiller,
Yeah.
first Navy strength gin into the New Zealand market, at any kind of commercial success, first bar partnership. And I think kind of speaks to a real connection between product and people of we're making this thing, but it's about the people who are drinking it. And therefore, how do we keep that going? What's your staffy at the end of the night these days?
It's cognac, honestly. It's actually, I'm quite abusive with it. I do a shot of cognac with the team, which is have done for a number of years. I think the Martell VS, just entry level Martell, but it's just got such good flavor. Yeah.
I have a couple of Martells just sitting on the back bar right there.
Cool.
Yeah, I actually have the Martell Noir, which is pretty banging.
Wow.
In fact, I'm coming to Wellington this weekend, so perhaps I should bring you a couple of samples.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah. I will say that one thing with the drinks, I've been trawling through it, just pulling menus up. I found the original menu from 06, from July. So we opened 7th of July for my daughter's godfather's 30th birthday. He's a DJ called Leon D. He plays up in Auckland a lot, Leon Dale. And he used to be the house DJ at a bar I worked in the 90s. And so we opened for his birthday 30 years ago. And it was literally a bunch of DJs and friends in a room. And the fun part of it, and this will get a lot of people who are going through licensing problems right now, is that we opened on that night with 6 weeks of special licenses, and we just traded every weekend, and we just rolled special licenses until such time as we got our full license on the 19th of August in 06. And so for those first 6 weeks, we just had celebrations every weekend and trialing different menus and different drinks and so on. And so that first menu, apart from the Tory Street and the twists, all the drinks were named for the era of Al Capone and gangsters in Chicago, which, where the Hawthorn Room is, which tied back to the name of the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of Hawthorn came from our grandfather's pipe smoking. So talking about timber and English plants. And so, which is why there's no E, which is why it drives everyone bananas. Yeah. Don't you love it? 20 years on. Yeah.
Spell check these days. You think it's helping. It's not helping.
It's not helping. It's not helping. It's like, I've had some really bad examples of that recently. My spell check loves to transition from in to on every sentence. It's like, So I mean, I've got the menus. We've said to the team for the 20th, we're going to do a drink from every year on the menu from the 17th of July for 3 weeks. We're going to do 3 weeks of sort of just telling people about the old school drinks, making fun with it, which would be quite cool. But I think the lovely thing is you go through them. The first thing you notice is the price of them is hilarious. It's like, wow, okay.
Tell me, where are we in the realm? Are we in the realm of 12 to 14?
Yeah.
14 to 16?
14 top. So 14 and twists for 10. And the psychology of the twists was that a couple could come and get 2 drinks for $20. So they could cleanly hand over a green note. That's an actual form of currency, cash. Younger viewers may understand what that is. And then 2 cocktails would be under 30. And that was that was the whole idea of, and at that time that was pricey. And now we're not there. And I think, when I look at, we're not there. And I don't want to be there. I think, I look at some operators who are really running to the bottom pretty quickly with pricings under $10 for a full-size drink.
I don't understand how. I don't.
No, I don't understand. I understand if you're trying to just get people through the door, but the responsible aspect of consumption means you cannot, you literally getting $12 to $20 out of that person, and then anything beyond that is you're lifting their rate, and then other people have to deal with them. And that's the bit I find hard. I think it's all our responsibility if we're looking at the total experience of people going into hospitality. So you're saying there are less people. If someone's coming to me for a drink before dinner and they're going to dinner, that's their total experience. So I want them to go, and I think that's vice versa. If someone's going to dinner and then coming to us, there has to be the total experience understanding. And so I don't understand how people can sell a whole lot of drinks at $6 to people. Can't even get I can't buy a flat white and a takeaway cup for $6 in the city. How do you come back from that? How do you then reset your pricing to a point where it's, and people tell me it works, and I get that the numbers must, if it works for them, that's great. But in my world, it wouldn't work. It'd be,
I mean, forgive my use of the term circle back.
Yeah.
But I think this comes to that heart of what is it that operators are doing in the short term that actually doesn't serve our purposes in the long term. And I think that's because we're subtracting value out of the equation and out of the experience in the wrong way, right? So a cheap drink does not equal value when we're trying to build consumers who appreciate a good drink as a benchmark of, I'm going to have a good time, I'm going to have a good experience, this is a cultural experience. And $10 drinks, $10 margaritas don't do that for people. They serve a very short-term need where actually, and if you wind it all the way back to that licensing conversation, that's not about creating responsible avenues of service. That's about how do we get people in the door and get them buying drinks, regardless of what the outcome of that might be. So I think that is some of where, I love the idea that we could get back to or get forward to, a space where going out for a drink is a cultural engagement in the same way that it is in, the piazzas of Italy. You go for an aperitivo and it's a way of connecting with other people as opposed to a way of, moving low cost product across a bar in a high format way.
Yeah. And I totally agree. I mean, I think you're right. It's always hard to come back from loss leading, right? It's almost impossible. And now you can now see it in restaurants as well. So the $10 menu. So and there's operators that are doing it really well, and it's their business model. But is it value? Is it really adding to the experience? I think it's a hard one. If that wasn't your normal, if that was offering, right? There's some in the market that's always been their offering. That's what they've always done. That's nothing new. They create an environment. They create an atmosphere that's them, and they move forward. But those operators that are dropping their price point to maintain foot traffic, it's incredibly hard to go the other way. And we all know that, the government's not going to reduce the levy on alcohol this year, next year, or any year in the near future. If we're all seeing a 6% jump in baseline price, or 1.5% to 6% jump in our baseline product cost, either the rebate is huge, which comes back to the company providing the alcohol, wanting the volume, which goes against the responsible service aspect, or is it, so I'm the small little guy I've never been a volume game, right? So I'm not that part of the market. I don't think that's not what I do, but I think, I've always had a lot of admiration for anyone who does that stuff. And I also love the spread of hospitality. We all need different things happening so that everyone has somewhere to be entertained. Because I don't necessarily want to entertain some customers at Hawthorn because Hawthorn's not their vibe. It's not their place.
It does sound like, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It does sound to me like actually, if we could get rid of high volume dispense bars where people are just going in for a volume play, maybe licensing wouldn't have to be trying to solve that problem at the cost of smaller operators who are not trying to play in volume, because that actually is the issue. When you get to the heart of it, what licensing is trying to manage is dangerous consumption volumes.
Yes.
So
because that's
take
what it
high
says.
volume away, different equation. Now we're talking about good experiences.
Yeah, but there's still a portion of society who want high volume craziness.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that gentrification aspect of society, that gentrification of hospitality is definitely happening with the food aspect. If you were to try and open a bar in Wellington right now, which was just a bar, and anecdotally, I've heard this from operators who are trying to do that. It's been flatly said to them, "Oh, well, if this was a restaurant, you would have no issue with your license." So that's where, and that's not to say that's just because that's the licensing. The legislation is about harm reduction. Harm reduction is associated with consumption. the easy play is licensed premises, because who wants to have a go at the supermarkets and the liquor stores? I think Australia's done a really good job at that. So they've encouraged people back into bars and restaurants because of the structure of off-prem. They've also changed their ability, the taxation rate on keg pour, which is an on-premise only experience. So people are, there's a less taxation on draft, which means you can bring your draft price down, which means you can pour more beers at a more approachable pay. I think that works. I did raise that at a hui at Parliament, or if you do that for beer, what happens with wine and keg cocktails? Because again, no one takes a 25-litre keg of espresso martini to the house for the weekend. Well, most people don't. Some people might.
I
But
mean,
you know
I
what I
think,
mean?
yeah, what it's illustrating is that there are other more sophisticated ways of solving and approaching some of these problems, and we somehow need to get people around the table willing to, have a
Yeah.
conversation about it. But again, who's got margin and runway for that right now?
Well,
when
I
actually
think
we
that's
just can't keep the lights on?
yeah. I mean, my wife Lisa and Lisa's been the backbone of the operation, like supporting me with administrative stuff for the last 10, 12 years. Yeah. And it's and part of that is that you want to have the wherewithal to be part of society and help out and get into those to drive and be part of those chats and those groups. And it's incredibly hard if you don't have margin to play with. You're always sort of ducking and diving to find how to make this work. To actually step outside and provide support to the community it becomes harder. And it's I find that can be a little bit disheartening sometimes, because you're like, well, why can't So I go in loops of being party with the groups of around the city, and then something will go wrong, and I'm out of the loop again. And some of the bigger operators have that structure where they can do that. But even then, you go, well, what was achieved? You try, and I think the biggest example with Wellington of late was dealing with the council and what is now defunct Let's Get Wellington Moving Golden Mile correspondence. Most operators on Courtney Place want improvement on the street because it's needed, because it's dated, right? But to get any sort of traction with the people involved, because they know better, was incredibly difficult, because it was already signed up. So there was just pushback, and it was frustrating, because because the story was like, you're trying your hardest to be the poster child for Wellington's tourism, but at the same time not listened to. And that's tough. And I think some of them operators have had really good and done really well at getting traction and getting movement, but it's a hard part when most cities use hospitality as their hero for tourism, right? You go to Canterbury, Otago, Auckland, you look at their videos and bits and pieces, and it's all hospitality led, destination led. It's not come to our library. It's not check out, whatever. It's not come shopping on our main street. It's dine here, drink here, go to this performance, this, and I think that's a hard one when you're used in that regard, but you're not allowed to be that as creative as you could be. Yeah.
What does the next year of Hawthorn look like?
I don't know. Next year, Hawthorn, I think I just we were trying to work out how to celebrate 20 years, and the room's really small. So we're like, so we're going, so I
Is
think.
it a year's worth of special license parties and celebrations?
Yeah. I'll just print them all out and put them on the stairwell. It's like, this is, can you imagine the clerical work? The intention is just to celebrate the 20th year. I think we're going to look at continuing the history coming through. I just want to really use the opportunity to engage with customers that may have, we're no longer on their loop, because we're here. One of the nicest things about Hawthorn is 20 years in, I can still stand here in the bar, look at the spot monitor, and look at people downstairs on their phone, looking at Google Maps, trying to find us. And I think that's so cool.
It's just upstairs, guys. It's just upstairs.
It's just there. It's just through the door. You're right there. And I think there's so many people who've gone through so much in their own personal life in the last few years that I'd like to be a place where they can feel comfortable, just come and celebrate something, right? Whatever it might be. Because if you go back to 2008 and the GFC, the society was pretty shitty with everything. And what we found was that people just got so frustrated with the shitty that they just wanted to go out and have a blowout and they catch up with their mate and just talk. And I think I'd like to just be the place for people to do that. And I think we're doing pretty well. I mean, we've got, we're doing the right thing, but I think honestly, all of that aside, we're going to do what we do because we're good at that.
And Hawthorn doesn't change. That's the magic.
Hawthorn doesn't change. It's quite hilarious. Like the stuff you can see behind me has been here. Apart from Nicola up on the fire, she changed, but she freaked out the bar manager at the time, so I thought that was funny. But everything like the books and the ornaments in the bar, have all been here or have arrived from other bartenders. So, and I think if you're going to open a bar, one thing I will say, and I learned this from listening to Dale DeGroff years ago, is if you're opening a bar and you want people to sit and feel comfortable, make the things they're looking at tactile and have meaning. Anyone can put a concrete slab down, wash it white, and do cosmos and gin and tonics, I think it was his phrase. Like, can you imagine New York 1990s or 2000s? But none of that's warm. You want to have things in. And so everything in Hawthorn, from the bitters bottles to the lamps to the awards to the mementos that have been dropped off, all have a story, which is really cool, And every so often someone will go, "Where'd this come from? This is weird." And I'm like, well, that came from a bartender from China who was at a competition, and we served drinks out of that with lemongrass strapped to the top of it. It's like, okay, cool. That's random. And I will say in the last few years, I've taken to, and my wife will agree with it, I'm a bit of a hoarder, but I've taken to getting mementos from bars in Wellington that have called time. So pieces of art, pieces of equipment, something that just is tangible back to those bars so that they're still ongoing in the city in some way. Because I think that's important. Because there's some, and unfortunately in the last few years, there's been some really iconic spots with some amazing people who have just called time for different reasons. And I appreciate all those reasons. But it's just hard sometimes because really you go, if things were okay, they wouldn't have had to make that call. And that's a tough conversation, I feel, for those people. I'm glad. I mean, we did that we lost CGR. So in 2024, called time, there was just no, we go back to doing the numbers. The numbers just didn't stack. We tried for a year to make those numbers work, and it just came back to a candid conversation with the accountant going, okay, it's either Band-Aid time or we have consequence that knocks on beyond the Band-Aid, and that's, it's tough. And it's interesting though, because, it was hard. You got to take the emotion out of it, and make the call. It's tough. Yeah.
Well, here's to 20 years of Hawthorn.
Thanks.
It's been a pretty great ride. Here's to the next however many you have left in you. I intend to be along for all of them.
Yeah. I think that's the big one, eh? It's like, yeah. But I think I will just finish. The one thing I do love is that I love meeting with the team and talking about drinks and talking about what we do. I still really enjoy all of that. And I think, and just watching that excitement on the staff and on the team's face when the drink is right. When you put a drink down and you taste it and it's just good. Do you know, that's just such a magical moment. And especially for people who are learning that part of the game, because, it's awesome to be able to say to people, that drink is just delicious. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. That's the best thing about this game. Yeah. That's me.
Delicious drinks.
Yeah.
Here's to a great year of celebrating Hawthorn turning 20.
Thanks.
What a ride.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. All right.